If you don't fit in, it might be because you're not designed to be controlled. The world will tell you that having few friends means something is wrong with you. That you're awkward, damaged, behind. But watch the truth, most men aren't surrounded because they're strong, they're surrounded because they're useful. They laugh at jokes they don't respect. They nod at opinions they don't believe. They tolerate disrespect just to keep a seat at the table. And they call it being social. You sit outside that circle and you feel the weight of it, nights where the phone doesn't buzz, weekends that feel too quiet, the suspicion that you're being left behind. Meanwhile, the loudest men collect attention like coins, and you're supposed to envy it. But look closer. That attention is rented. It comes with a price, your honesty, your standards, your spine. The popular man is often a performer. He shapes his personality to the room. He becomes whatever gets him invited. And when he goes home, he's still empty, because he never stood for anything real. Your loneliness may not be a defect. It may be a filter. Maybe you were betrayed once and learned the cost of easy brotherhood. Maybe you watched the friendly men switch sides the second status shifted. That lesson makes you quieter. Harder to impress. Harder to manipulate with compliments or shame. They can't buy you with a drink, a laugh, or a group chat. Comment rare. That's why you're alone for now. Because shallow circles hate men they can't program. They fear the man who doesn't clap on command, doesn't gossip to bond, doesn't beg to be liked. They fear the man who can sit in silence without collapsing, because that silence means you're not hungry for their approval. That's why the world rewards masks. Masks are predictable. Masks can be managed. A man with a mask can be bought with laughter, threatened with exclusion, controlled with rumor. But a respected man doesn't live for the crowd. He chooses his company like a king chooses his guards, slow, selective, merciless about loyalty. And yes, that makes you look cold to people who live on cheap warmth. Here's the uncomfortable truth: if you have few friends, it might be because you carry rare traits that make fake people uncomfortable. Traits that expose the game without you saying a word. Trait number 4 is the one that makes them fear you, because it turns your quiet presence into a mirror. So don't rush to fill your life with noise just to feel normal. First, understand why the court punishes men who won't perform. Then we'll name the 7 rare traits hiding inside your solitude. Most men have many friends and no allies. The modern circle looks like brotherhood, but it's usually a marketplace, attention traded for laughs, access traded for approval, loyalty rented until a better offer appears. Machiavelli lived inside courts where men smiled while sharpening knives, where alliances shifted with status, and where perception decided who ate and who starved. That world didn't disappear, it moved into offices, group chats, gyms, and dating scenes. The court is louder now, but the rules are the same: be entertaining, be agreeable, be useful, and you'll be liked. Refuse the performance and you'll be labeled difficult, cold, arrogant. That label is a weapon. It pressures you to lower standards just to be included. Don't fall for it. You are not antisocial. You are anti-fake. And there is a cost to being real in a culture built on masks. Real men don't hand out trust like candy. They watch. They test. They let time reveal character. Because in court politics, closeness is a currency and secrets are a tax. The goal isn't to collect people. The goal is to collect what actually protects a man: trust that survives pressure, reputation that survives rumor, leverage that survives betrayal, and peace that survives loneliness. When you understand this, your solitude stops feeling like rejection and starts feeling like selection. You stop chasing circles that require you to shrink, laugh on command, or bleed your dignity for a seat. You start building a life that attracts fewer men, but better men. Quiet loyalty. Quiet competence. Quiet respect. Courts are loud. Loyalty is quiet. And if your life is quieter than most, it may be because you're no longer auditioning. It means you're learning to move like a strategist: measured speech, selective presence, zero begging. The crowd calls that loneliness because they can't imagine peace without noise. But peace is power. And power attracts the right men when you're ready, not when you're desperate. Hold your frame long enough, and loyalty will recognize you. Now let's name the traits, because once you understand them, you stop seeing your solitude as a defect. They call you cold because you don't clap for their act. Most friendships are built on tiny betrayals of the self, laughing when it isn't funny, nodding when you disagree, shrinking your standards so you don't make the room uncomfortable. A weak man does it automatically. He trades authenticity for belonging and calls it vibe. But you feel the performance like sand in your teeth. You can hear the forced laughter, see the compliments that are really negotiations, sense the loyalty that lasts only as long as you're convenient. And because you see it, you can't unsee it. The mask doesn't fool you, so the person wearing it starts to resent you. They want you to join the play, because shared delusion creates quick bonding. That's why shallow circles bond fast. The rules are simple: agree, flatter, gossip, perform. Real connection is slower, because it requires truth, and truth threatens weak men. Your intolerance for masks makes you harder to collect. You don't hand out trust after one night out. You don't call strangers brother because they shared a joke. You watch patterns. You notice who changes tone when status enters the room. You notice who becomes brave only in a group. That awareness protects you, but it also isolates you, because the average man wants comfort, not clarity. He wants to be entertained, not exposed. So he avoids the one man whose eyes stay quiet and honest. This trait isn't arrogance. It's accuracy. It's the beginning of power, because a man who sees the game too clearly can't be managed by it. That's why invitations dry up, small talk feels poisonous, and you choose silence over cheap laughter. The price is fewer faces around you, yet more respect inside you. And once you refuse masks, you also refuse low standards. Trait 2. You don't have fewer friends. You have fewer liabilities. Most men hand out access like it's free: their time, their attention, their favors, their secrets, their emotional labor. They call it loyalty, then act surprised when they get used. But you don't move like that. You don't crown someone brother because he laughs with you. You don't confuse proximity with character. You watch reliability. You watch restraint. You watch respect when nobody is watching. High standards make people uncomfortable because standards are a mirror. A man with low discipline wants a friend who will normalize his weakness. A man with loose morals wants company that won't judge his lies. A man addicted to drama wants a circle that will feed the fire. When you refuse to participate, they label you arrogant. But what they're really saying is, you're expensive to access. You value men who keep their word, who control their mouth, who don't switch sides for clout, who can handle disagreement without turning it into sabotage. You don't bond over hobbies, you bond over principles. That's why your circle is smaller. The average man can be bought with attention. You can't. You don't trade favors for belonging, and you don't laugh to buy protection. You'd rather be alone than owe your dignity to men who disappear when trouble arrives at all. And because you can't, you're harder to manipulate, harder to guilt, harder to shame into tolerance. Here's the FOMO truth: most men would rather lower standards than sit alone for a season. They choose temporary company and permanent disrespect. You chose the opposite. That choice feels like isolation at first, but it becomes strength, because every no you enforce removes a parasite before it grows teeth. Standards create distance, but distance creates strength. That leads to trait 3, self-sufficiency. When you don't need them, you see them. Most male friendships aren't built on strength, they're built on shared weakness. Complaining sessions disguised as bonding. Validation traded back and forth like cigarettes. A constant need to be included, tagged, invited, approved. That's the economy of the crowd. Everyone pays with their spine so nobody feels alone. And a self-sufficient man disrupts that economy because he can't be bribed with attention. You can sit in a quiet room and not panic. You can miss a party and not feel erased. You can go a day without messages and still keep your posture. That alone makes needy men nervous, because it exposes what they're running from. They don't hate your solitude, they hate what your solitude reveals about their dependence. Self-sufficiency doesn't mean you're above people. It means you're not for sale. You don't laugh to be protected. You don't chase to be chosen. You don't overgive to earn a seat. You build in silence, work, training, skill, money, mind, while other men build social proof and call it progress. That's why you don't fit the group chat culture. You're too calm. Too focused. too hard to bait with exclusion. Emotional men fear solitude because solitude forces them to face themselves. So they fill their calendar with noise and call it life. Self-mastered men use solitude as a forge. In that forge, your standards harden, your patience grows teeth, and your identity stops wobbling with other people's moods. You become your own witness. And once you become your own witness, betrayal hurts less, because approval was never your oxygen. That's why you have fewer friends. Not because you're broken, but because you're built different. And solitude sharpens your perception. Trait 4 is what makes you dangerous in conversations, because you notice what others try hiding. They don't fear your words. They fear your eyes. Loud men are rewarded because they entertain the room, and entertainment is cover for weakness. The clown gets invited. The talker gets attention. The oversharer gets trust. But you don't trade awareness for a seat. You listen, you watch, and you collect patterns. Who changes tone when power enters, who copies, who flatters upward and stomps downward, who laughs with you then edits the story when you leave. That quiet pattern collection is why your circle stays small. Predators avoid witnesses. A manipulator can work a crowd, but he struggles with a man who simply observes, because observation is pressure. Your silence becomes a mirror, and insecure people hate mirrors. They want you talking so they can steer the pace, bait a reaction, and label you. When you stay calm, they can't map you. They can't predict which button moves you, so they reach for insults, cold, weird, too serious. Translation: you are not participating in their illusion. Machiavelli learned this in courts. The man who observes without begging becomes dangerous, because he sees alliances forming before they are announced. He hears hesitation behind loyalty. He watches small betrayals before they become large ones. And once you see these things, you cannot unsee them. Shallow friendship starts to feel like a transaction wearing a smile. That's why you speak less. Not because you lack confidence, but because you respect information. You understand that words are receipts, and careless words become weapons in another man's hands. So you stay quiet and accurate instead of loud and exposed. People sense you remember everything, and that makes them nervous. And when you finally speak, it lands heavier, because it is built on evidence, not emotion. Observation makes you precise, but precision demands emotional control. Trait 5. They call you detached because you're not emotionally rentable. Most men don't build friendships through respect, they build them through shared instability. Drama becomes glue. Gossip becomes currency. Outrage becomes entertainment. That's why the loudest men always seem surrounded, they supply the dopamine. But when you have emotional control, you stop supplying it. You don't overreact to disrespect. You don't spiral in group chats. You don't bond by tearing someone else down. And to emotional people, that feels like distance. They want a man who will explode so they can feel alive. You stay calm, and they feel exposed. You don't overshare your wounds to strangers and call it being real. You don't chase closure when someone disrespects you, you take the message and adjust access. You don't argue for loyalty, you observe behavior. Weak men show emotion to be believed. Strong men show consistency to be respected. That consistency makes you boring to men addicted to chaos, but it makes you magnetic to the rare few who want peace and power. Emotional control also protects your reputation. A single public outburst can erase years of credibility, and manipulators know it. So you learn to keep your face neutral, your tone measured, your words clean. You don't perform anger to prove you care. You let standards prove it. And when you stop bonding through drama, your circle gets smaller, yet your life gets quieter, stronger, cleaner. That is why you can feel alone even in a crowd. You refuse emotional prostitution. But this trait isn't emptiness. It's control. It's the foundation of authority. Emotional control also changes how you treat loyalty. Trait 6 is selective trust under pressure. Always, fast friends become fast enemies. The men who rush brotherhood are usually the men who rush betrayal, because speed skips proof. If you've been stabbed in the back, you know closeness is expensive. Not emotionally, socially. One secret in the wrong mouth becomes a rumor. One moment of weakness becomes a story. One private complaint becomes a public label. Betrayal doesn't just hurt, it educates. It teaches you that charm is cheap and consistency is rare. So you stop trusting smiles. You stop trusting shared hobbies. You stop trusting the guy who says, "I've got you," when there's nothing on the line. Rare men test loyalty quietly. Not with paranoid games, but with time. They watch how a man acts when you're not useful. They watch how he speaks about people who can't benefit him. They watch how he handles disagreement, envy, and boredom. Words are easy in comfort. Loyalty is proven under pressure. That's why you don't rush intimacy anymore. You let small things reveal the big things. You notice who respects boundaries without needing explanations. You notice who keeps your name clean when you're not in the room. You notice who stays consistent when a higher status option appears. Most men never learn this lesson. They keep restarting the same betrayal cycle with new faces, calling it bad luck. They confuse familiarity with trust, and they pay for it repeatedly. You changed. You became slower, quieter, harder to impress. And that's why your circle looks empty to the crowd, but safe to you. You're not bitter. You're trained. You don't hate people, you just don't hand them keys. Your loyalty is not for sale, and your friendship is earned through actions repeated when nobody is watching at all. And once you stop trusting easily, you start building seriously. Trait 7, Mission First Focus. Your absence offends them because it exposes their stagnation. Most circles are built around comfort, jokes, distractions, mutual permission to stay the same. A mission-first man is a threat to that comfort, because your discipline turns their excuses into mirrors. You don't disappear because you hate people. You disappear because you have work to do. Training. Skill. Money. A body that doesn't fold under stress. A mind that doesn't beg for approval. Legacy. And when a man lives like that, he becomes unavailable to the constant social maintenance that weak friendships demand. You don't chase applause, you build. The crowd bonds through leisure, but leisure without direction becomes slow death. They laugh tonight, then panic later when life presents bills, consequences, and time. You sacrifice now, and that sacrifice looks like arrogance to men who can't imagine delayed gratification. They call you obsessed, too serious, antisocial. But what they're really saying is, you remind us of what we're avoiding. Because when you're building, you don't have time to perform. You don't show up to every hangout just to prove you belong. You belong to your future. And your future is louder than their parties. This is the rarest trait of all, the willingness to be misunderstood while you become dangerous. Very few men can tolerate quiet seasons. Fewer can tolerate being excluded while their standards rise. But this is how power is forged. You trade temporary company for permanent capability. You trade cheap laughter for expensive results. And one day, when the same men who ignored you start needing you, your silence will be the answer. But here's the danger: solitude can turn into arrogance or bitterness. So now we install the code for strategic brotherhood. A lone wolf is romantic. A strategic man is unstoppable. Solitude can be a forge, but it can also become a prison if you start worshipping it. Some men have few friends because they're rare. Others have few friends because they're wounded, proud, or afraid of being seen. Don't confuse isolation with superiority. Machiavelli didn't preach loneliness, he preached positioning. The goal is not to hide from people. The goal is to choose people. If you've been betrayed, your mind will try to protect you by closing every door. It will call it standards, but underneath it's fear. If you've been ignored, your ego will try to punish the world by acting above it. That isn't power. That's resentment in a nice suit. Power is calm selectivity, open enough to build, guarded enough to survive. Here is the middle path: build 2 or 3 real allies, not a crowd. Men who keep their word when there's no reward. Men who don't leak your name for entertainment. Men who show up on time, handle conflict cleanly, and respect boundaries without speeches. You don't create this with oversharing or instant intimacy. You create it with time, shared standards, and small tests that reveal character. Socialize like a king. You don't beg for attention. You arrive with presence, not noise. You speak less, listen more, and let people show you who they are. You give value, but you don't give access for free. You don't gossip to bond, you build to bond. And when you find a man whose discipline matches yours, you invest slowly, because rare respects rare. You don't need many, but you do need mirrors of your standard, so discipline doesn't calcify into coldness, and brotherhood stays possible. Solitude is power when it sharpens you. Isolation is a trap when it hardens you. Now we seal it with a final identity oath, so you leave with a standard, not a mood. This is the oath. Not a mood. A standard. If you have few friends, stop calling it a curse before you understand the price of crowds. You don't tolerate masks, because you see the game too clearly. You carry high standards, so you don't call everyone brother. You are self-sufficient, so you don't beg to be included. You observe more than you speak, so predators avoid you. You have emotional control, so you don't bond through drama. You test loyalty quietly, because betrayal taught you the cost of easy trust. And you are mission first, because your future matters more than their comfort. That's 7 traits, 1 outcome. You become rare. Now lock the identity in. You're not lonely, you're filtered. You're not rejected, you're reserved. You're not broken, you're forged. The crowd calls you cold because they can't buy you with attention. They call you distant because you don't rent out your peace. Let them. While they collect faces, you collect principles. While they chase noise, you build power. And when life turns heavy, as it always does, the men with many friends will realize they have no allies. You will already be standing with yourself, and with the few who earned your trust. If this hit you, comment rare. If you're done apologizing for your standards, comment forged. And if you want more dark masculine self-mastery, Machiavellian clarity, Stoic discipline, silence, strategy, identity transformation, subscribe. This channel is for men who would rather be respected than included. Remember this line and live it: you don't need many. You need real.